Let's talk about closures. Not the programming language, but the concept of wrapping parent scope inside a function in JavaScript or TypeScript. Let me explain. A function in JavaScript generally has access to two scopes: the scope of the function block itself and the global scope. So this means that variables and things that are declared inside the function itself will be accessible inside that scope, and also any variables declared globally will also be accessible inside that function scope. Well, a closure is a feature where an inner function can have access to the scope of the outer function that's calling it, even after the outer function has finished. So this concept is fundamental to understanding how scope and execution context work in JavaScript. Here's some example in code. In JavaScript, functions create their own scope. So this means that variables defined inside a function cannot be accessed from outside that function. So if we define a variable in this top function here, we can't access this variable in the second function because it's not in the scope of that second function. So if we do this, this will log undefined. So closures, they allow a function to access variables from an outer function's scope, even after that outer function has executed. So in this example here, inner function is going to be a closure, and it's defined within outer function, and it has access to outer variable. That's a variable in outer function scope. So even after outer function has finished executing and its execution context is removed from the stack, inner function retains access to that outer variable. And this is because that closure inner function carries with it in the scope chain of the outer function at the time it was created. Closures are useful because they let you associate data with a function that operates on that data. And that's really useful in programming patterns like callbacks and modules and event handlers. For example, closures can be used to create private variables, which can be very useful in encapsulating and protecting data within a module. So here's another example. In this example, count is a private variable. The increment and decrement methods are closures that have access to that count variable. The count variable can't be accessed directly from outside, it can only be modified using the increment and decrement methods. This pattern here is known as the module pattern, and it leverages closures to create public functions that can access private variables. Another common use case of closures is in event handlers. When you set up an event handler in JavaScript, you often want it to have access to variables in the scope of where it was created. So closures make this possible. In this example here, the anonymous function passed to add event listener is a closure, and that closure has access to the message variable here. So it doesn't matter when this button's clicked, the event handler can always access that message variable and display it. Closures also have implications for memory management. Since closures hold references to the outer function's variables, then those variables are not garbage collected as long as the closure exists. And that's an important consideration when you're working with closures, especially in environments with limited memory resources. It's also worth noting that closures are not unique to JavaScript. They're a feature of many programming languages. However, due to JavaScript's functional nature and the way that it handles scope and execution context, closures are particularly powerful and versatile in JavaScript, and you'll see them used a lot. Closures are a fundamental concept in JavaScript, and they allow functions to access variables from outside a function's scope, even after that function has executed. So understanding closures is crucial for effective JavaScript programming. As you continue to work with JavaScript, you will likely find many more uses for closures, so experiment with them and consider how they can help you write more efficient and maintainable code. Remember, the best way to understand closures is to practice writing and debugging code that uses them. So just like everything with coding, practice equals training, and that's what my YouTube channel is all about. Training to code by practicing something over and over again. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.